A few months ago, I was editing my Abramelin Diary of 40 years ago because it was wanted to be published by Aeon Books. And as I was doing that, I was also read this book, Cave in the Snow by Vicky Mackenzie, which is the account of an English woman called Diane Perry, who took on the Tibetan name Tenzin Palmo and secluded herself in a remote cave 13,000 feet up in the Himalayas and spent 12 years there, of which the last 3 were a retirement, a very strict retirement, much stricter than the Abramelin retirement. In fact, she never even lay down at night. She sat in a meditation box upright all the time. Now, there's no way that I could really compare the physical experience of what she went through with my 6 months in a North London suburb doing the Abramelin operation. And yet it was a fascinating read for me because psychologically there was a lot in common of what I experienced and what she experienced. And I mean, for instance, she seemed outwardly to have achieved nothing, and yet she said, she was never bored. It was the most valuable time of her life, and I felt very much the same about the Abramelin. One bit in particular, though, struck me. This comes up a couple of times in the book, but it says, like all journeys taken with a spiritual goal in mind, the way into Lahore was strewn with difficulties and dangers, as if such obstacles were deliberately set in place by the heavenly powers in order to test the resolve of the spiritual seeker. Now, I've had that experience of a most uncanny set of obstacles being thrown in your way when you're trying to achieve something. And I actually wrote up something along these lines in my book, What I Did in My Holidays, in a short piece called A Warning to Those Who Might Consider Becoming White Magicians. And I give the example of someone a city dweller who decides that they are going to go in for organic farming and live the simple life. And I said, let's just say you're a city dweller who's just heard about the evils inflicted by human civilization on the environment. You decide to be no more part of it. So you sell your flat and set up an organic smallholding in the deepest countryside, determined to live your life in unexploitive harmony with nature. Now, I suspect that deep down in your heart, you somehow expect nature to thank you for it, to shower you with her abundance, to make the sun shine on your endeavors, to make your seeds spring gratefully from the soil. In fact, the opposite will happen. You must expect a lousy reception, the worst weather of the century, an epidemic of new crop blights, mad goat disease, poxy chickens, every calamity you can imagine, plus a whole crowd more. Meanwhile, the factory farmer over the hill reaps record profits and the value of city flats soars, ... I began that piece by giving an example of an experience I had once when I was in the deep country and needing to get a bus back home on a Sunday. And there was a bus strike. So there was a crowd of us at the bus stop getting more and more angry. And then eventually a bus did come along, absolutely stuffed full, and the person said, I can't take you all on board. And furious people were saying, what the hell, we've been waiting in hours, blah, 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 blah. Absolutely angry with the guy. And the guy said, look, I'm a person who didn't strike. I thought I owed it to you to come to this bus, and I've had nothing but abuse ever since. And I draw a parallel there. And I said that the conclusion of my piece goes like this. Indeed, anyone led by curiosity and conscience to turn from the clamour of surface reality, to listen to the voices of the winds, stars and spirit, must not expect reward for their dedication. Instead, they must be prepared to cope with the rage of the neglected. Now, the reason this is coming up is that since I started to edit my Abramelin Diary, I've had so many problems. My Mac system, which has been so reliable for so many years, twice had to be totally rebuilt. And the second time I rebuilt it, within a fortnight, I'd had my first burglary, and they took nothing except my Office Mac system, the one that I've been doing these videos on. And that was really just the beginning of it, because, of course, when I got out another old laptop and I went to the backup, the automatic backup, to try and retrieve the things I'd lost, it said file was corrupt, you can't do it. And then over the months since then, I've spent so much on sort of recovery software and things like that, and my disk has been spent the last fortnight at a repair shop. They are trying to recover it, and at the same time we're suffering the most severe drought in known history in Cape Town, and my vegetable beds are shriveling up. I installed huge rainwater tanks in time to catch a good, about, I don't know, 10,000 litres of rainwater, and then someone left the loos flushing when we were out, and the whole lot washed away down the plug hole. And my oven caught fire, and you can see in the background I'm having a replacement put in, meant to be put in today, except the people sent a message earlier today, said, sorry, mistake, when we said Friday we meant Monday, so I'm left with a cooker hanging around. Oh yes, I had cancer, skin cancer on my knee, and had to have an operation, and now I've discovered that one of our cats, not the white one, but a lovely tabby cat, who's getting very, very thin, is diabetic. So we're tied down to twice a day having to inject him with insulin, and so on. I could list a few other things, but I don't want to be too miserable about it all. But basically, it's a hell of a business. It's very much like the Abramelin curse is back in force. So I've been thinking a bit about good and evil, because it really feels as though I'm up against something pretty evil. And this is why, by the way, you haven't had much in the way of videos from me for ages, because I've been battling with all these things, and I haven't got my system back, but I've rigged up something that I'm recording on now. Well, what I decided I'd do is, good and evil for me is not strictly a magical question so much as a religious one, but of course, like everything, it does impinge on magic as it impinges on everything else. So what I thought I would do is follow this short video with 3 videos representing how I try to cope with the concept of good and evil in 3 different ways. What I call the binary way, good, evil, black and white, the analogue way, and then the trinitarian way, or the ternary route, or something like that. So I'm going to produce those 3 videos and follow up on this one fairly quickly. I'll post the first one, the binary way, at the same time as I do this, and then after a few days I'll post the other 2 to give you time to absorb them if necessary, and I'll put them in a single, what do they call them, sort of, single list. God, I can't remember the name. Anyway, that's what I'm going to do. So there'll be 3 videos on good and evil, how I try to cope with this in terms of the binary method, the analogue method, and the trinitarian method.